Joining us now is Behnam Ben Taleblu, a senior fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Thane Rosenbaum, a Middle East analyst. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Behnam, let's start with you. As we mentioned, the U.S. is sending even more firepower to the Middle East. The USS Arlington, which is an amphibious transport landing dock used to move troops. Patriot surface-to-air missile batteries are on their way to the U.S. Central Command area, and the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group already there. What do you read into this, Behnam?
Well, great to be with you, Michelle. This is a continued hardening of the U.S. position, as well as a part of a very high-stakes game of public diplomacy with Iran. The U.S. is looking to make more normal force posture arrangements more costly for Iran by advertising something that is actually, in my view, a course correction of the U.S. position. It is telling Iran that Iran cannot get away with anything, and that Iran is incentivized to back down. If you remember, last summer, the U.S. removed 4 Patriot missile defense systems out of the Gulf. Now the U.S. is adding 1 back in, still, in my view, 3 behind, but very publicly advertising that one can, in fact, go a long way in deterring Iranian bad behavior.
Thane, do you think that this will deter the Iranians?
You know, they have always, and it's always lovely to be with you, Michelle. You know, they've always known for a promiscuous foreign policy, and this is a hard one to understand. Clearly, the Trump administration is not finished with the decertification of the Iran deal. More is being contemplated, and this is a show of force, a demonstration that this is more than just the crippling sanctions, that we're watching you from all angles. And this is clearly something that we see John Bolton, Secretary of State Pompeo, and of course President Trump have been very forceful on one country repeatedly, Iran, and this is another example of that.
Thane, do you see Iran continuing to lash out through its proxies like Hamas and Islamic Jihad, keeping in mind last weekend over 700 rockets fired into Israel from Gaza, Iran, the sponsor of those terrorist groups? Do you see Iran acting out in that way against Israel?
Well, this is what I meant before about the promiscuous foreign policy, because it always shows itself in different ways, whether it's in Yemen or in Syria or in Lebanon. They have attempted to extend their regional influence. That's what Iran has done. I think the show of force here in the United States is a way of putting a check on that. But there's no question that every attack against Israel from either Hezbollah or Gaza to some degree is connected to the mischief of Iran.
Behnam, this all comes as the European Union has rejected the ultimatum that Tehran has given it. Iran has threatened to resume its high-level enrichment of uranium, that is, unless the Europeans help them out and they help them avoid those U.S. sanctions against its oil sectors and more. What does this mean now for the Iran nuclear deal?
Well, you know, the Iran nuclear deal is essentially dead because it was never designed to live on without a single one of its major parties, particularly the U.S. or Iran, not being a party to the accord. Now, with the Europeans, should Iran actually go ahead with this threat plan, the 2 60-day calendars that President Rouhani of Iran has put forward, and Iran move into the second phase of that calendar, which is not just to stockpile excess heavy water or excess LEU, which if Iran did excess LEU, low-enriched uranium, that would change the breakout timeline. But if Iran actually went ahead and went above 3.67%, or if Iran did not redesign the heavy water reactor at the city of Arak, then it would be in a material breach of the deal, and the Trump administration would finally be in the position to go to Europe and say, you guys now need to collapse the deal, use the UN sanctions, and join us in a transatlantic pressure policy against Iran like you have long promised. So if Iran really does escalate here, it would be driving Europe into Washington's hands, and that could actually provide for a more united pressure policy against Iran. So Iran does have very limited options here, and sending these assets to the Gulf and sending this kind of tough public diplomacy rhetoric to Iran is designed to remind them of that they are incentivized to back down.
But Behnam, considering the Europeans have been supporting Iran through all of this, and many of them have just been against the U.S. pulling out of the nuclear deal because of just general opposition to President Trump and his foreign policies, do you see the Europeans cooperating with the U.S.?
Well, they haven't been cooperating with the U.S. thus far, but the green shoots of this transatlantic diplomacy, the green shoots of the fix the deal movement, when Brian Hook and other members of the Iran Action Group had tried to actually fix the fatal flaws of the deal before President Trump pulled out of the deal, that has created enough confidence and enough shared interest where the Europeans today have actually checked the Iranian position publicly. They are not in favor of what President Rouhani has said he would be doing. Because remember, the Europeans have put this fatally flawed nuclear deal on a pedestal, and Rouhani now is in the position of attacking it. So in many ways, it does not behoove Iran to continue to escalate on the nuclear file.
Thane, do you see a scenario where the economic sanction applied on the regime in Tehran is so intense that they do say, hey, we do want to come back to the negotiating table?
I think that's where we're headed, Michelle, and I think that we're right. He was right. Behnam is right when he's saying, look, this only plays into the hands of the Trump administration because the Europeans are now buying in to some of the reasons behind the decertification of the Iran deal and the renewed sanctions on them. Look, they're crippling right now at this point. Saudi Arabia is pumping more oil. Iran is pumping less oil. There are demonstrations of foreign policy and military presence in that region. There's threats by Iran to close down the Strait of Hormuz, sorry. And that itself, of course, is like the Suez Canal from years ago, another belligerent move. So, yes, I think that we're on the road to something, and I think that something might be that Iran comes back to the table.
All right, let's see. Thank you so much, Thane Rosenbaum and Behnam Ben Taleblu. Appreciate it.